Hey, Corona TV viewers, this is Peter Keys from Leonard Skinner. I want to wish you all a happy birthday.
First of all, let's just do the elbow bump because we can't do the handshake right now.
Hello, everybody on Corona TV. This is Macy Gray.
You're smiling, and I saw your beautiful daughter earlier, who I said could come on the show anytime. Welcome, Shiv Singh.
Thanks for having me, Joseph. Great to be with you.
Well, welcome, everybody. I am shopping for cowboy boots today. It is another day in quarantine. Well, I'm not actually quarantined, self-quarantine, self-proclaimed exile from humanity. But I have one of the most human people in the world, a human being of note, a wonderful man by the name of Bob Pearson, who is my guest today. And we're going to have, as always, a great time, of course. Why wouldn't we have a great time? That's rhetorical. We're going to have a great time. Why are we going to have a great time? Because it is National Rat Catchers Day. It is. Can you believe that they actually named a day after rat catchers? I know what rat bastards are. I don't know what a rat catcher is. National Rat Catchers Day commemorates the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. And it's also a day to thank, it's an opportunity to thank all present day exterminators. I would argue, probably safely, that they are essential services, especially if you don't like rats. So one person who is not a rat is Joey. Hello, Joey. Welcome back, and glad to have you on today. Well, as I said, it's a great conversation because not only is Bob Pearson a multiple author, he is a serial entrepreneur. He's just started a new company, or actually a new model, a new agency network. Can't wait to talk to him about that. And he is a crusader against disinformation. And God knows we need more people like that today. Bob is my hump day interview tomorrow. I have novelist Jane Green and then David Berkowitz rounding us off. And you know, I may as well just tell you that next week, all goes well, NBA legend Jamal Mashburn is going to be on the show. So if you're a fan of his, and who isn't, he will be my guest next week, amongst other people. I will obviously share those people with you closer to the time. If you want to get a sneak preview of the guests, please subscribe to my newsletter. Go to josephjaffe.com/subscribe or text CoronaTV to 66866, and you will get not only upcoming previews of guests, but my take on the previous week's guests, and then also all of the copy associated with my seated soliloquies. So very quickly, just want to wish a bunch of people, Josh, happy birthday. Josh is one of my fellow School of Rock stars. Leora Bloom in Israel, and then of course on LinkedIn as well. Just want to send happy birthday to a bunch of you, James, Carl, Phil, etc. Well, in today's seated soliloquy, I'm actually, you know, what I've done in the past is I have always tried to tie that directly in with my guest. Today, it's a little bit more indirect. It's something that's just been on my mind. And I'm sure that Bob will have a point of view on it, because Bob knows a thing or two about storytelling, about social media, and about influencer and influencer marketing. But I wanted to talk to you today about the expression 15 minutes of fame, which refers to short-lived media publicity or celebrity of an individual or phenomenon. It was, of course, inspired by Andy Warhol's words, "In the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes, which actually appeared in the program for a 1968 exhibition of his work. These words could not have been more prophetic, especially in a day and age dominated by always-on, hyper-connected consumers and that social media thingy. Now, should you be one of these web celebrities, as I call them, or an internet famous wannabe influencer, you're up against it, because your sandbox is their sandbox. And by their, I refer to every other person just like you that aspires to be the next Kim Kardashian, Ninja, PewDiePie, or Charlie D'Amelio. I could argue that it's never been so easy to go viral, but in reality, it's never been so hard to break through the proverbial clutter. Just lose yourself on TikTok for an hour or two to view a minuscule fraction of the showcase of World's Got Talent contestants. So good luck with that, bucko. You know, throughout my journey on CoronaTV, I've been completely open-minded about inviting people onto the show. My bar is low, not in terms of talent, but in terms of being a snob about it. I want to give people a chance. But in a few cases, and I stress a very few, I've reached out to a few people, one or two people, who were rising on Instagram, had been featured on CNN, or were doing their rounds on Facebook. And then their agent or manager responded to me by thanking me for my interest, but declining because their client's schedule was fully booked with interviews. Now, there are no sour grapes on my part, but I actually wanted to give you guys advice. And it's very simple. Don't ever pass on an interview, ever. Not now and not in the future. Take the opportunities presented to you, because you never know when they will dry up. And they will dry up when the world moves on to the next fad or flavor of the day. Oh, and Warhol was wrong. It's actually much less than 15 minutes today. So make the most of the time you have before it is well and truly gone. For someone who is not just enjoying 15 minutes of fame, but I would say maybe 15 years of fame, hopefully with respect to modern medicine, 15 decades of fame, although I'm not sure he wants to live that long, is Bob Pearson. Bob is currently founder and chair, and he's currently because he's just going to keep on innovating and inventing and reinventing himself. But currently, he's founder and chair of the Next Practices Group. This will be his third firm that he's helped build. He has written 4 books, teaches at 3 universities, teaches at the State Department, and advises a range of media-related software companies. So please join me in welcoming the original cowboy, Mr. Bob Pearson. Welcome to the show.
Joseph, great to be here, and I loved your background. I'm already looking at the boots, figuring out which ones I like the most.
So you are well known for your, let's just use the word fetish, shall we, for cowboy boots. So would you like to demonstrate which boots you're wearing today?
Well, since we're in these times, I have this. I'm just going to give you my favorite. This is I often wear this one when I'm speaking. It's Eastern Diamondback Rattlesnake, and there's nothing better than getting on stage in Chicago or somewhere else and just looking at people going, "Who the hell is this guy?" You know. But I have 11 pairs to choose from, and there's always another skin to get.
And that's kind of part of your trademark look. But you're a man of contradictions, let's just say, because first of all, and transformations maybe is fair to say, because I think I met you when I think that was you on the left.
I think I hit a stage in life where I was about 280 pounds there, and the Dallas Cowboys were not interested in me as a backup offensive lineman. So I thought it'd be better to do something about it, and actually had surgery. And I dropped 90 pounds and then went up another 20. So I'm now about the right place. But it's made a big difference in my life.
You got to the point where I once got to as well, where people would start just saying to you, "You're too thin, you're too thin, you're gaunt." And you were maybe a little too thin, I think, the last time I saw you.
Yeah, that's what happened. I mean, people started to ask if I was okay, and I realized, okay, I'd definitely gone too far. But that's part of the process, when you take off weight, right? Is you want to go as far as you can and then go back to what's going to be normal. So, but it just feels so much better, Jim Weiss is the one who, from WTO, Jim's the one who kept pushing me to say, you got to do something about it. He had the same surgery, had the same result. And well worth it.
He did. I mean, I've only known him looking the way he looks now, which is pretty terrific.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, I mean, we were probably two of the bigger people in communications at one point for the wrong reasons. But no, but he was a real inspiration on that and just wouldn't let go because it's psychological, right? You have to be ready to do that. And once you are, it's fine. But I think that's the hardest part for people is to say, I'm going to commit to do this.
I agree. I mean, I think, and I've said this to people, I believe, you know, people always speak about the ratio or the relationship between diet and exercise. But for me, it's a relationship between physical and mental strength and willpower. And I believe I think it's 90% mental, if not higher.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with mental, there's also another aspect of that. And this is what I always say to folks who are in their 20s and starting out is just read constantly. You know, read as many magazines and books and just use your brain in different ways all the time, not just what you're doing for work. And it's interesting how many people look at you like, oh, that's a good idea. And you think, oh my goodness, you know, how could you not be doing this? But that's important too. Just like running, like you run 50, 60 miles a month. It's the equivalent of doing that.
And the funny thing is that I've actually tried to combine the two, which is that I always listen to spoken word. I mean, I listen to whether it's Tim Ferriss, whether it's, but for the most part, it's Howard Stern. My wife right now is busy saying, and there's the obligatory Howard Stern reference. But I've always loved it, and sometimes I listen to marketing podcasts because I feel, you know, let me feed my body and feed my mind, and come out of the end stronger on both parts and on both fronts.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Joseph, is I try to read things that are different. Like I'm finishing up a book now on Chernobyl. The next book I'm going to read is probably going to be on Robert Moses, on how New York was built in terms of the infrastructure. I just find that by reading different things, it leads to more innovative thinking, at least for me. So,
I mean, I clearly couldn't agree more, but something that's in the back of my mind is yesterday I had Tom Morris, who, you know, is a double PhD, a public philosopher, you know, and he's written some, you know, very, very cool books and different spins on things that you might, you know, not expect, like if Aristotle ran General Motors. You know, things like that. So taken philosophy and then mixed it in with commercialism, right, or capitalism. But he's written a novel, and I know that you're writing a novel too, and we'll get to that at the end. But I wonder if this is a trend at the moment, which is kind of non-fiction and business writers moving into fiction. Talk a little bit about why you decided to write a thriller in particular case, why you decided to cross over.
Well, I've written 4 serious books, you know, nonfiction books, and I'll probably write a few more. But I think there's most of us who write, we consider ourselves to be a little bit of an artist, and so that's a canvas, you know, and it's another challenge to say, can you actually make a story that compelling? So I'm actually writing a piece right now on like I would call it a modern day serial killer who really understands technology inside and out. So all the technology in the book is stuff that can really happen. And then it's of course a chase, you know, that goes on from there. So I won't say too much here, but it's fun to write. It's pretty cool.
So wait, is the book called The TikTok Killer?
Should be. It could be the new title. You may have just changed the title there, Joseph.
He stuns all his victims into submission through a very aggressive lip syncing and dancing.
Yes, yeah, that could be I'm not sure I fully. I actually look at TikTok all the time to analyze it from a risk standpoint, but I have to admit I don't really fully understand why some of the folks are more popular than others. The lead one on TikTok, Charlie's, I can't remember last name, Charlie D'Amelio, has about 67 million subscribers. So when you put that in perspective, that's like 37 times larger than CNN primetime.
It's unbelievable, right?
It's crazy.
But she's completely owned by the Chinese, so it's okay. You know, it's the drone. It's all mechanized. You know, But yeah, I mean, it's a great phenomenon. And speaking of which, in all seriousness, one of my soliloquies was actually dedicated to what happened on TikTok with respect to the infamous Trump Tulsa rally, and I actually for me, it was a moment in time when this lip syncing, dancing teenage platform actually came of age and actually demonstrated that a non-voting populace could actually be quite influential in terms of affecting some kind of change.
Yeah, that's something that not TikTok per se, but that's something that I'm starting to write a lot about, is we look, where are people spending their time worldwide? And the gaming is the new family room, very clear. And it's not just gaming, it's e-commerce and it's texting, and you can do everything there. The other one is message platforms. They both have nearly 3 billion people involved. And I think companies in particular are not doing enough yet to figure out how to integrate appropriately in both of those platforms.
And look, if I've learned anything through my journey, and even since we met each other, is the worst thing you can ever do. First of all, it's a sign of getting older, but I don't mean literally a sign of getting older. I don't mean in terms of your age. I mean in terms of your inability to stay fresh and young in thinking and open-minded. But when we start to dismiss something because we don't understand it, to me, that's the beginning of the end.
Oh, I agree.
And if you just stay patient enough, you'll find the nugget or the diamond in the rough.
Yes. Yeah, that's something, you're absolutely right. I think I was writing a blog post recently on disinformation, countering it, and saying that really it's like an iceberg, and everyone focuses on the top. They want to talk about election interference or the fake news they heard about, but we're not looking below and understanding like how censorship is actually evolving, or all these other risks that we don't even think about, because it's so easy to just jump on something that's public and in front of us.
And we have to, and I guess by definition, we have to train ourselves. We have to unlearn all of these lazy practices, to kind of become smarter at being able to, and more discerning, and quite frankly, pause before we hit the share button. Yeah.
I mean, and censorship is like a good example of, we know what it means when it's truly repressive, but let's say that you and I are having a great discussion here, and we both criticize a few countries that take offense to that and have the ability to censor us. Well, they may just shadow ban you, cut down the number of viewers you can reach out to, and you don't understand why the show is not reaching as many people, but you're actually being censored. So because of the sophistication of technology, it's easier than ever to do it subtly. So most of us never realize it. So we have to basically match the innovation that is occurring by those who want to throw us off balance.
I actually thought to that end, I wanted to show you this. I saw this the other day and it really made me laugh, Bob. It says, this Swedish doctor exposed how world governments were going to weaponize the COVID-19 virus back in 2017. And then at the bottom it says, no, he didn't. I found this image on Google and created this meme in 3 minutes. Facebook is not a news source. Neither is YouTube, you fucking potato.
Right.
I was offended by it because I feel bad for potatoes out there.
Right. That was very straightforward, but it's never been easier to manipulate visual content, compress audio, to do things that are fake. And when people ask about that, I say, well, just think about Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood makes their living off creating a false reality, and bad actors have all those tools. So it's, it's going to be, the key thing is we're smart enough collectively to build the techniques to actually see these anomalies so we can catch them quicker. And that's where I think, Facebook and Twitter and Google, they're doing a lot more than they get credit for. And I will be critical of them as easily as anyone else. But at the same time, I really appreciate how they're doing probably more than anyone to innovate in this space.
This is a little bit of a kind of a sidestep, but I think that I think it's healthy to be able to, recognize that good and bad go together. you can, for example, and I've often said this even when I've presented, which is I don't need you guys to agree with everything I say. In fact, if you did agree with everything that I'm saying, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not provoking. I'm not creating perspective, and I'm treating you all like you're lemmings or like we're all clones. And so, like, I think even just the art of being critical is to be able to say, "Hey, Bob, I love you. You know that, and and I'm a big fan with everything you've said. But this post or this article, I actually could not disagree with you more." And for you then to be secure enough to say, "Okay, that's fine." It doesn't change the respect. If anything, it boosts the respect, because guess what? You can't be perfect and you can't be on the money. And what is perfect anyway? It's just basically telling someone what they want to hear.
So Joseph, as you're saying that, like you and I know the beginning of social media. And in the beginning, we had people that would come in and complain about stuff. And we were sensitive at first. And then we thought, oh, this is actually not a bad way to have a dialogue with customers or people who disagree with you. Now you go fast forward to 2020, and unfortunately, we're having less of those debates. We're having more pile-ons, but not as many, just healthy discussions on a lot of topics. And I do hope we get back to that, but I don't know. I think we're going to have to get tired out by just piling on people and get back to having intellectual discussion.
Yeah, and as I wrote in Join the Conversation. Conversation is between two or more sides, not two or more people. Especially if the two people are in violent agreement, because all they're doing is reinforcing their worldviews. So who benefits from that? By the way, Michael Trout on LinkedIn, he said that shadow banning is happening on YouTube and Facebook, and so that's what happens with technology. And then Chip actually said time is running out for the TikTok killer. So just
I like it.
so
I like the comment, Joseph, with the first one, because what I've always said is that from Michael Trout is human. We think of algorithms like some technical solution is deciding things, but no, humans create algorithms, and humans decide on the weighting and the biases in the algorithms. So that's absolutely correct that we're constantly making choices. Question is, what are those standards and guidelines that guide that? And we don't really have that. We have it in the media business, whether it's not always what we like, but it exists. But what you can put on television or radio, we don't really have that when it comes to social internet.
No, we don't. But thanks to pioneers and explorers like yourself, with a lot of your endeavors, you've definitely looked to create those guidelines or standards or best practices and now next practices. And we'll get to that in a moment. What I wanted to do is actually take a step back, because as I said, you're a man of contradictions for me, because I've always called you the cowboy. My association with you is an Austin, Texas boot wearing image. And then suddenly I realized, wait a second, he's wearing a Yankees cap today.
Originally from New Jersey, right?
I mean, a Yankees shirt today. I guess you can't take you can take the man out of Tri-State, but you can't take Tri-State out the man.
Yeah. So when I first came to Texas, we've been here almost 15 years, and I was asked to be part of the Emerging Technology Fund for the state of Texas. And when I was introducing myself, I said I grew up in the northern New Jersey, the northern Texas section of Jersey, and just played with that. I've always referred to myself as a Jersey Texan. I like both cultures. I think there's something from both. But I prefer to live here, but I appreciate the Northeast mentality in a lot of ways. The directness and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I guess you take the northeastern directness, you combine it with a man wearing these kick-ass, mad, bad, and dangerous to know boots, and what's the old joke? What do you call a man wearing cowboy boots that big, sir?
Sure. Yeah. Well.
So Bob, you in your position, you've had an opportunity to teach so many people. and to be a mentor and to be a true, you are a true visionary, and you've paved the way for so many people that have been fortunate enough to know you. And now with the beard, the wisdom and the the wiseness, if that's even a word, is you look the part as well. But I wanted to take a step back and understand, how you got here and how you were made. And I think a big part of that comes, I'm sure, to your dad.
Yes, great picture.
And I see the triangulation between, now baseball and the love for baseball, the love for sport, and of course your dad. And I know he passed away this year.
Yes, in '82. Yep.
I wanted to ask you what lessons he imparted on you, and what influence his, that relationship between the two of you has had on you becoming this entrepreneur and this trailblazer.
That's great segue. And my dad was played AAA for the New York Yankees, so he was a great shortstop. That was when Phil Rizzuto was the shortstop for the Yankees, so he got close, but he didn't quite get there. But what he taught us, because when we grew up, he was our baseball coach in high school, and he would teach us how to practice. And what I learned at an early age is there's a style of practice where you just throw a ball around and you have fun. And then there's my dad's version where he'd go outside and he'd hit a ball straight up in the air, or he'd make us do all these things that we couldn't do. And so he taught us how to practice correctly, so you become really good at something. The other thing is he was such a big believer in teams. I remember, like yesterday, we won the championship, and I was in 6th grade, in Little League. And I came home with my trophy, and I said, "Dad, look what I won." And he reamed me out. He said, "You didn't win anything. The team won this. You were just part of the team." And that was one of many lessons about how we're just people, and how we work together matters. So he's a man of a humble guy, lived by he was just a great role model, but teaching us how to practice hard and teaching us how to be humble. I think that translates when you get older, when you think, okay, are you listening to people? Are you actually helping them? To this day, I still will take anyone's phone call, have coffee with people, even if I don't know them well. You're always looking at how to give back. And I find by doing that, you end up getting twice as much for yourself anyway, because you're learning so much from the folks you interact with. So a couple of the lessons.
I certainly always experience that with you and from you at all of the events that I either attended or spoke at, which is you never make it about yourself. And it's funny because you would think it's such an obvious learning and insight. And yet, what do they say? Marketing is common sense, but how many of us have common sense? Right. So few people practice that humility.
Yeah. Well, it took me a while. I mean, now I'm at a stage in life where I'm comfortable being out there and talking and doing stuff like this. But for many years, when I would do something and part of a team, and I would get, an award or get recognized, I was extremely embarrassed. I mean, I was like I wanted to just run away, not be part of it. And so, but you learn over time that that's also not a good answer. The right thing to do is just accept things and, again, make it always about, are you making other people more valuable? And that's actually, I know if you go into the next practice, that's really what we're doing. It's a collective of founder-driven firms, and we don't have an org chart, but if we did, I'd be at the bottom of it. And so my goal is to say, how do I take these really great, smart people and help them build a more innovative offering that will make a difference together? So same mentality, really.
Well, we're going to get to the company in just a moment, but I actually wanted to just spend one more moment and talk about 3 more influences. Because I mean, we see how your father's lessons and teaching has almost, come full circle in terms of that brilliant point you just made, which is if there was an org chart, you'd be at the bottom. I mean, I want to ask you later how you actually implement that or practice that. And I guess part of the answer is when you let the founders lead, right? And then you just ride their wake. But you've also had the ability to work with some unbelievable leaders in business.
Yes.
And and I just think it's incredible. I mean, like looking at your story, there's so much. There's Bob Feldman, there's Mark Benihoff, there's Michael Dell. I would love to just get one learning or insight from each of these people that have informed you throughout your career.
Yeah, no, I'll give one. I'd be happy to give one for each. I mean, I love all three of these guys, and with Michael is like one of the best incremental innovators I've ever seen in my life. And a good example of this is we needed to do a new policy on how we would respond to customers, how quickly we respond to customers online. Never had one really. And so I worked on it. He said, go do it, Bob, make it happen. So I did, and I came back with a 24-hour policy. And he looked at it. He said, okay, great job, but you're missing a period between the 2 and the 4. And I said, well, at 24 to 22, I haven't even launched it yet. He said, yeah, but you're looking at it wrong. You should start at 0 and go from there. And so that was the kind of thinking where you go like, gosh, that's so obvious. But that's how Michael thinks every day, is how do I improve something every day? And he teaches you in a very collegial way, not emotional. So you're inspired as you walk away and you want to run through a wall. Mark Benihoff, another brilliant executive. And I remember like yesterday when we were having some issues with one of the things we were doing. Salesforce.com was coming into Dell and we were putting out Idea Storm and we had all this stuff we were doing. We had a couple issues. Mark is over in Davos and he calls me at about 2:30 in the morning his time. And all he wants to do is know, okay, what's going on? How do we fix it? What do we do? What's the next step? Get a game plan together. It was like it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and then he followed up on everything he did. And that was Mark every day, right? And so you learn that you're never too big or too powerful to be focused on your customer every day, independent of the size of the customer. Michael also taught that too. He would always say, treat everyone the same. You just don't know who someone is. It's better to just treat everyone equally. And then Bob Feldman, I love Bob, and when I was at GCI, he recruited me to go over there, and he said, I want you to start a healthcare division, which is now called GCI Health, as a separate company. And he said, here's your desk, here's a plan, good luck. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go figure this out. And of course, I had his support, but that journey of saying, gosh, I gotta get out of this office today and make this happen. That turned me into the entrepreneur that I would believe that I am today. Is you don't assume that people are going to help you. You just figure it out and you build it. And we have to be a little bit of fearlessness in there.
The essence of initiative, which of course you can't really be a lazy entrepreneur. You can't really be an entrepreneur and expect other, I mean, suppose you can, you're just being a .com billionaire.
An oil well or something and then be a lazy entrepreneur, I guess, but yeah.
But certainly, I mean, we're talking about origins and we're talking about entrepreneurs that have that drive, that initiative, that desire to succeed, or many entrepreneurs are driven more by the fear of failure than, and I don't mean they embrace failure, but they'd rather they push off against that so violently that's what inspires them. It's not success. What is success? Success is relative. You know, as I said yesterday, you're rich, someone's richer than you. For them, it's just this constant. I loved what you said about Michael Dell. Incremental innovation or incremental improvement. Keep moving forward. Never stop. Never ever assume that you're at the top, because you can always go higher.
Yeah, and it's a mentality of, it's interesting. A couple of times, I only had to do it about twice. I would say, hey, Michael, why don't we celebrate this achievement that we made? And he'd be like, well, why? That's in the past. And I got the point, which was, it's not that he didn't want to celebrate it. It's that keep focused on what's next, what's next, what's next. And if you do that, you're in good shape. I think the other thing, Joseph, that I've learned over and over again is the smartest thing an entrepreneur does is surround themselves with really smart people and spend your time helping them unlock because you're already unlocked, you know? So it's like, how do you help the next four people do that? And that's when things scale. It's very hard for anyone to just do it themselves and carry everyone around. That doesn't make sense.
So now you're at the W2O group. You join them when the firm has $18 million of revenue, and you left when they're up to $177 million in revenue. Yeah. We're going to spend a good chunk of time talking about the next practice, but let me ask you this question: with that success, with that track record, why did you leave?
So starting in the beginning for a second, I mean, why did I go? When Jim Weiss and I were talking, he had a very good firm, he had a good life, you know. But what I was saying is, hey, let's get together and build a transformative company, use this base, and then build that. And when we were building, for example, data science back in 2009, I think people thought, like, you know, this guy's either stupid or an idiot or he'll fail. You know, didn't have lots of people saying, oh, that's amazing. Of course, now that's a no-brainer, right? So you have to be able to fight through all of those people who tell you that what you're doing is not right. But for me personally, why did I leave? I think it's a great company. I think W2O is going to have probably the best year again this year. And the people there are very strong. But I like creating things. I like building things. I like, you know, disrupting models. And when you get to a certain size, you know, you're forming committees, you've got teams looking at plans, you're scaling, right? And that's for a different mindset and a different type of person to take that to the next level. And I know that that's where I'm not as good. So I'd rather go back and do it all over again, you know, and then I'm not only in my element, I'm happy doing that.
Yeah, and I think it also explains and talks to, you always look at, often in an acquisition, right? You see a large company swallowing up a small company and the founder leaves soon after. And I think, you know, we've probably looked at it, or many of us maybe have looked at it wrong, which is we look and say, well, you know, what if Kodak acquired Instagram? They suffocate the company, the founder leaves. But it really isn't about the company at all. It's about the founder. It's about the founder is ready to invent and reinvent and do it all over again. Yeah,
and I've had the chance also through investing. Like I've at this stage I've talked to hundreds, if not probably thousand plus founders, and the ones that are self-aware and know what they're good at and what they're not good at, they are worth their weight in gold. But unfortunately, many don't know. They actually think they can do everything and they're indestructible. And they're usually the ones who run into walls. By the way, that's nothing to do with W2O. Like Jim is a great case of someone who has evolved into someone who can lead that scaling organization. And he loves that, right? So that's the perfect thing for him. And for me, it's perfect thing is not knowing what I'm going to do tomorrow and figuring out what that new model looks like.
So let's talk about that now. But before we do, Ritesh says hello from Suttons Bay, Michigan, to both of us. And Bruce, Eric Anderson says, good to see you.
Hey, Bruce, yes, BP the VP. That was my nickname at Dell. It was BP the VP and then Bob the Bulldozer.
As opposed to Bob. Well, you're also Bob the Builder. So
right, Bob the Builder. Yes, both were involved in getting stuff done that other people didn't think we had to get done.
All right, so now let's talk about this this new network, and I'm always intrigued by two things. One is when people that I trust and respect, like you, start new businesses, and especially when the model is slightly different. And today we're seeing a lot of, we're seeing almost the falling or the failing of the big agency networks. We're seeing the rise of independence, the rise of new business models or approaches, collectives, if you will. So talk a little bit about this. I mean, you've alluded to the fact that this is a founder-led and founder-run collective. I would love for you to just expound a little bit more on that.
Yeah, we started with a blank sheet of paper and said, okay, what is it that we think needs to be done that's different? And there's a couple things. One is the Next Practices Group, which is the holding company for these companies. will never have more than 51% ownership in any company that is in the network. So that means founders will always have significant equity, and then they also have equity in the parent. So they have a reason to make everything work together and a reason to make their entity really good. So I think that's refreshing. Behind the scenes, you can still have one infrastructure and all the things that, you know, provide those services. The other thing is, I think in this day and age, we looked and said, the future firm is not a communications firm or a marketing firm or a technology firm. They're all of the above. So what we're going to do is assemble the pieces carefully that builds a firm that can do everything from, you know, web development to server migrations to paid media to data science to, you know, global campaigns. And so that's really what we're pulling together, because we just think that the fluency that goes across tech, marketing, and comms is key. You know, and then the other part is it goes back to, for me at least, like a sports analogy of who are the athletes who are so good they should be on the field, you know, building this team. And so that's what we're doing with the firm is like, you know, you take Rocket Sauce Media Labs as an example, and you have Dave Pierpont and Julia Thuman who come out of Ansira. It's one of the better companies out there in performance marketing, you know, paid media, lead management. They know exactly what to do. So really that's where I say, and my job is to say, okay, how do we help make a even better offering? What can we do to innovate the offering they have, and you build from there. So those are, you know, the big thing is I think the ownership never changes. So you don't have people going, oh, I'm going to watch the calendar until I get my earn out and then I take off. I just don't think that works. And you know, the next practice is, the name we came up with was what I've been saying to clients for many years is if you want to be mediocre, then what you do is you do best practices. So study the past, make sure you get the past right, and then repeat the past. Or look at what's happening and figure out what's next, and that becomes the next practice. So with any client we have, our mission is to, you know, push them, evolve them to get that edge in the market and do a little more than they expected to do.
So I love the idea now, you know, I've heard that a lot, this idea of best practices, next practices, new practices. This, you know, this again brings you back. It's so funny to, you know, the Michael Dell days and
right.
What's next, what's next, what's next, what's new, what's next.
That stuff, it really does embed
amazing.
in you. Yeah, I have to say that I'm thankful for having the ability. You know, it's like going to Harvard Business School 3 times, you know, or 4 times when you hang out with people like that. So yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. And I think it's a mentality to say, okay, if this is how we do search engine optimization, that's nice. What's next? You know, and sure enough, we have some new search models that I think are very different and they're not on the market. Or how do you target customers differently? We have something we're building called Audience IQ, very different approach. But most models that I found that work, in fact, almost all of them, are that iterative flavor. They're not destroying the old model, they're just evolving it, you know? So that's, I think, an important thing. When people come out with new products that you're like, gosh, I can't even understand what they're talking about, it's probably because that's a product that's going to fail.
So,
you know, it should be pretty simple.
So I want to kind of go into a little bit into the sausage factory in a moment, but I would be remiss if I didn't give a little shout out to our mutual friend, Mr. Mason Nelda.
Mason, yeah, good to see you, Mason.
I always feel like when I see these wonderful friendships and relationships that have a very strong South by Southwest flavor, I get a little sad as well. You know,
yeah, you get times at South by, right?
I so want to be back there. You know, Bob, I think W2O led the way in terms of data and analytics, recognizing that, you know, you can fake it till you make it to a degree if you're an agency network that's spewing the superficialities and the jargon and the buzzwords, but actually being able to have the competency and capability is completely different. So Ritesh makes an interesting point here, right? And he just updated, which is the question is, do clients buy that way, right? Because in dealing with these large monolithic companies that are built to suck, and dealing with procurement groups, how do you can sell differently, you can go to the market with a different value proposition, but what happens when the company or the client isn't ready for you or hasn't organized themselves to be able to buy you?
No, I think it's a great question for Mitesh, and the way that I approach that is, let's say a firm does hire you as more of a communications firm or more of a marketing firm. Then if it's a communications firm and you have a new search product, they may go, oh, that goes somewhere else. But if it becomes a search media relations product, then it might fit right into communications. You're doing the exact same thing. So how you actually position your models allows them to come in the door that you're in. And then what I find is that once people see what's possible, they don't care. But I think where Tesh is right is in the very beginning, there's people blocking to say, oh, no, I'm going to pigeonhole you. You should go over here or go over here. And I just fundamentally reject that and say that our job is to figure out how to get in, teach, and expand what clients can do.
I would say that also, and Ritesh, this is also a response to you, to your point, which is this business was always meant to be, always was, and should be a relationship business. And I think, this goes, I think you imply it and you allude to it, and I know it to be true because I know you and I know some of the founders as well, which is when you've got a bunch of people who like each other and trust one another and respect one another and are true owners, you don't just see people that are eye candy, if you will, or brain candy in the room that are there just to fill a chair or a cog. You see actually a team or a family. And I think, and I don't even have to ask you the question. I know that that's the company or the network that you're building.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, we went through, we did founder dating for months before we launched just to make sure we all understood each other's offerings. And we're still doing that. But we also came up with our own beliefs and values, which we have on our site. And our last one is everyone's favorite, which is, it says, no assholes, hashtag no assholes. And then it says in parentheses, really. And that's what we mean. We have a culture of people who want to succeed, help each other out, evolve together. And if folks don't want to do that, that's okay, but they should go somewhere else. There's plenty of other places to work.
Okay, so I just typed that up. And what I was starting to type is where can I send my resume? Because like I have a beef with you, Mr. Bob Pearson, which is no HMS Beagle, no Admiral, no Joseph Jaffe. But as I'm typing it and I see no assholes really, now I understand why we're not working together. Because,
come on now.
I appreciate it. No, I feel better knowing the reason.
No. You and I will talk. We just launched, so we'll be having a conversation, I'm sure.
I can change for you, Bob. I can change for you. I will change. I will
put on some of those boots behind you, and I think we'll be in good shape.
As I said, I will grow. I will put a stick-on beard because I don't think in my life it will ever grow that big.
That's right.
Look, I think almost after a bit of a light-hearted exchange, I'd love to spend the final part of this conversation talking about one of your books and talking about, and quite frankly, even your latest book, which we'll touch on as well, in working with the State Department, but also, if you didn't do enough already, which I feel like you're kind of maxing out, you did write a book called Countering Hate. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about what we are living through right now with misinformation, with disinformation, with alternative facts, and specifically this idea, because when you put it into the perspective of hate, whether I hate you or, how do we heal? How do we bridge this divide in our country?
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that we hit in the book. We looked at the continuum of bias to hate to extremism, because we don't often see that as a continuum, but it is. And one of the things that I've learned in teaching at State Department and analyzing media worldwide is we have a very young world. And so, there's a lot of youth in the world, and the brain's main formation occurs between birth and age 25. It's when your habits and memories are really embedded in your brain forever. So we are playing a short game instead of actually looking at how do we reach people consistently to actually allow them to just blossom into the people they want to be. And so that means you have to look very differently at this. So encountering hate, we have a tendency to go, yeah, you're right, there was a protest, this group was bad. Yes, totally agree with that, if the group is bad. That's not really the point. The point is, are we using psychological models to understand how people become more susceptible to disinformation? If so, what do we do about that? How do we put in place the right type of educational programs for youth and other outlets, and things like that? So that's a lot of what we talk about in the book. And then, when I'm teaching, we're always looking at, I think this is going to lead to a renaissance in data science, is you have all these marketing attributes, you have all this data, and we have psychological models. And if we think of that triangle, we're not putting that together. So if you think of like availability bias, we know that if you're living in a country where you're just continually bombarded with disinformation, like we may be smart enough to say that's disinformation, but if you're seeing that stream every day, you eventually you say, well, maybe it is true. There's a guy, Faisal Al-Matar, who I think the world of, and he runs Ideas Beyond Borders. And he lived in Iraq. He's an American citizen now, but he grew up. He was born right around the Gulf War, first Gulf War, and he thought that Iraq had successfully invaded Kuwait and beat America. So he didn't know that until I think like 2008. So that's what happens when you have propaganda just pumped at you constantly. People grow up with what they think is the truth. It's not even that they realize that it's false. So it's a much more complex thing to deal with. And the good news is we, as a world, if we treated this like an open source type of topic and said, hey, if we all partner together, we could do more. So an example that I give in the book and when I teach is I've had the chance to teach probably close to 100 groups that deal with anti-extremist matters. Let's just take anti-Semitism, right? So you take all the groups who care about that. Well, do they coordinate on keywords so they can dominate search? Do they coordinate on digital techniques? Do they coordinate on messaging? The answer is no. Everyone's doing their own thing. They're all doing as much as they can handle, but because we don't work as a team, we don't impact the web the way we could. And those are very simple things that can be solved with open source solutions that don't cost money. So that's part of the mission I'm on, is to get people to kind of wake up and say, let's stop doing all this stuff in pieces and let's be smart. And if you think of the nemesis, let's take Russia. Russia works like a consumer packaged goods company. I mean, they are absolutely relentless with their campaigns and their messaging and their proxy networks, and they just don't stop. We counted, I think, it's 110 campaigns coming out of the Kremlin related to COVID-19 by the end of March. I mean, and it's a lot of time since then. It's unbelievable. So we can do it.
That is unbelievable. And if you've watched the show, you know that I always sneak in somebody else's quote at the perfect time. And this is, I think, the perfect quote for exactly where you were. So this is your quote, which is, I'm telling you a lie in a vicious effort that you will repeat my lie over and over until it becomes true. And with full warning, knowing that there's no way you're going to get it. But you can give up now, or you can try and guess and be wrong.
I have no idea. I'm going to just let you tell me.
Good, because that was, and I don't know why or how the context of when she said it, but this was Lady Gaga.
No kidding. Oh,
so
wow.
I'm not sure if it's actually lyrics in a song. I have to go and do a bit more research.
Wow.
But I think this also speaks, right, Bob, to it's not even telling stories. It's about, recognizing with this disinformation and misinformation that we've always been salesmen, sometimes snake oil salesmen, right, in marketing, in advertising. But now when you bring politics into it and you bring these always on networks, how we influence and how we persuade, I guess, is forever changed. So I would like to, this is your latest book. Talk to that.
Yeah, and writing it with Kip Knight and Ed, who we the three of us were some of the teachers at State Department, not all of them, but there's a nice group. Is what you realize is exactly what you're saying, Joseph, is we have a tendency to say, oh yeah, we have to deal with countering a problem. So let's put stuff out. We're gonna put out a press release, do an announcement, do an event. They're all transactional. And we're not actually thinking through, how do I tell a story well over time? So it actually makes a difference. And so this model, the ABCDE model that's in the book, is, like you think, audience behavior, content, delivery, execution, and it shows you how to build a narrative. Because what we were doing is we're teaching brilliant people who didn't grow up in the communications and marketing industry. So how do you teach them how to tell a story, how to craft it, how to know if it's successful, and do it for the long term? And whether you're a brand or you're in government, you want to do things for the long term, so your narrative really resonates. Probably a good example of that in the private sector would be Disney, right? I mean, Disney gets that we're gonna reach people the minute they can see a logo through the rest of their lives, right? So it's a customer for life. And the same thing has to be with issues that aren't going to go away. If you took climate change, or if you took any topic we care about, how do you tell that narrative in a way that will shape behavior over 10 years, not 10 minutes?
And I guess segue to present day, there is a very important narrative that needs to be told consistently and told across the board, and that's wear a mask. And clearly there's been no coordination, no collaboration, no consistency. There you go. Let me get that snapshot.
There you go. This is one of our first clients, actually. This is a Crayola, and they came out with a different color for each day of the week for kids. It's great. It's a really great idea. So anyway, this is my favorite mask.
I love that. I mean, to me, it looked like ladies' panties, but I mean, I get it. I get it. No, but like the creativity that actually can be brought to the table is potent.
Yeah, that's an example where they're making it fun. Right? They're making it fun. So kids, there's other ones that they can draw on and things like that, and then it's not a task. It's a fun thing to wear. So.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, we're fortunate. I am fortunate that I'm not saying goodbye to you just yet, because we're going to go and head over to the Zoom after show. And for those of you that want to join us, bit.ly/CoronaTV after show, and we'll spend about 15 minutes or so just continuing the conversation. I'm sure people have many questions, but for those of you that want to follow Bob, and you would be very wise to do so, automatically you will just end up with a beard. It just grows overnight. You can follow him on Twitter. You can find out more about his new network, nextpracticegroup.com. And Bob, just a few final comments. Roger Cantor said, great to see and hear your voice.
Hey, Roger.
And Ritesh said, good luck with the new venture, and let me know if I can ever be of help. David said, great show.
David, thanks, guys.
Glenn said, look at this, former state in the house. So thanks for everyone sticking around to the end. Come join us in the Zoom after show. Bob, it was a real pleasure.
Same here, Joseph.
I would say I wish you luck, but you don't need it. Just continue to inspire and mentor, and be the rising tide that floats all boats, because that's what you are.
Thank you. It's a great show, and thanks. I'm excited that you put this together. I'm glad to be part of it.
I was very happy to have you. Thanks, everybody, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Cool.